Welcome to Thought Criminal with Nick Rush. This is my first time in an official studio such as this one. It is 9:55 a.m. in Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm sitting in front of this green screen at the wonderful University of Utah, hoping that it turns into something other than a green screen later on, if I can figure that out. It's actually pretty crazy how this all turned out. The system that we have here in this studio at the University of Utah, of course, wasn't working when I came in, so we've had IT people in here for the last 30 minutes trying to figure it out while I sit here and sweat, thinking about how I'm going to make a good and entertaining show. Although it is a tough job, I am here to please the masses. So let's just get started. Real quick about me, I'm a writer for the University of Utah. I edit the newspaper here called the Utah Daily Chronicle. I'm assistant editor of the opinion side. And after watching people like Nicholas Fuentes, Owen Benjamin, Tucker Carlson, and kind of perusing the annals of YouTube for so long, I feel like I would give it a go myself. And so here I am. In a real studio with these bright lights. I don't know how I feel about these bright lights. I kind of like more of a low-key thing, but we got an hour in here, so we're going to try to make it as entertaining as possible. So in the news lately, what can we talk about? It's funny. There's some interesting stuff going on right now on 4chan, and this whole e-girl situation where this e-girl, which I guess means electronic girl, was apparently killed by some crazed lunatic. And I started going through 4chan, and I was absolutely blown away at the mindlessness of some of the people on 4chan. It is unbelievable. Not in a bad way. They are just savage people. They do not give a fuck. I'll tell you what, 4chan is an interesting place. I've never seen a place quite like it on the internet. Let me read some of the stuff on the R9K board on 4chan. It is a hilarious board. But that being said, apparently this is the board where the e-girl was murdered. Her murderer posted the images on R9K. She was a frequent trafficker who frequented the boards on R9K. But anyways, it's just the most, R9K, if you're not familiar with it, is the most insane internet forum I've ever seen. There's no coherence to it. There's the most random shit on there. Like, here's one, for example. It says, bought a fuck ton of Hawaiian shirts. Buy Cuban boating hat / shorts / sandals. Get a mini bar in my shit apartment. Set up all my liquor so it looks like a display instead of half-finished bottles laying around. Style it like a tiki bar. Buy a bunch of tiki mugs and shit. Make tiki drinks for guests whenever they come over. Suddenly people like me way more. Is it really that easy? Ever since I did this, people became way more accepting of my alcoholism, including my family. That shit had me laughing. I had to screenshot that and share it with you guys. 4chan is really an interesting place. Another one, this guy says he wants to kill himself, and people give earnest responses to this guy. Like, so this guy is asking for advice on how to commit suicide, and the guy says, turn a car on inside a garage and have all exits closed. Chat with Anons until you die. Wow, savage. Savage, bro. And he put a smiley face. What an asshole. You even have to throw in the smiley face. Shotgun to the head. Top down. Watch your angles. It's crazy. The guy then responds, I'm too much of a loser to own a car. And then the guy says, yikes. I reckon you're too much of a loser to afford a gun as well. I suppose you can order an escort or two. Have fun with them before you end it. Unbelievable. Here's another one. Anyone else here enjoy dark and melancholic feelings? I like the idea of being in a dark forest for eternity. I often get made fun of for it, both in real life and on the internet. I hope someone else can relate. And then someone responds, yeah, I embrace them since my life is shit. That's the funny thing about 4chan, though, is it really totally bucks the idea of any semblance of political correctness. It sort of shuts all of that down, and the feigning of morality and the sanctimonious nature of platforms such as Facebook, where people, of course, virtue signal till the cows come home, that is absolutely devoid. 4chan is devoid of all virtue signaling. It is absolutely savage. But I like it because it's got an air of authenticity, because of course it's not the folks that frequent the boards of 4chan, they don't feign morality or that they care about your plight. They could really give a fuck, and it's they would revel in your misfortune. It's kind of hilarious. Like, for example, someone made a troll post that said, that's trolling one of the virtue signaling post that says, it's okay to ask for help. We have a mental health crisis in America. People need to be listened to. Maybe he wouldn't have killed himself if he had someone to listen to. And and then there's a photo that says, it's okay to ask for help. Hashtag, okay not to feel okay. And of course they're trolling this. And they say, I'm sick to death of this shit. Idiotic retards who think the cure for suicide is giving a stranger the time of day. They kill themselves because life is unbelievably shit, not because they don't have some posturing, self-absorbed subhuman talking to them for 5 minutes a day. Killing yourself is perfectly reasonable and understandable, and you shouldn't try to stop anyone from doing it. You're just making it harder for them. And then someone says, this is a great response. This is what I was trying to just codify earlier. Yeah, I think we're already past this. Nobody takes those platitudes seriously anymore. That is a fact. Platitudes is really a boomer thing. The Zoomers, they do not engage in any sort of platitudes at all. In fact, I think the platitudes that politicians have spewed for so long have turned off the Zoomers so much, they are just diametrically opposed to any sort of platitude-based, reference guides or anything like that. For life, I should say. Of course, when you see people like Eric Swalwell get up on the Democratic debate and talk about, Trump's an existential threat to the country and democracy is, of course, threatened by him. People are so turned off by stuff like that. For Zoomers, it goes in one ear and out the other. It's absolutely hilarious. Let's get back to some of the boards on 4chan here. One, it says, ran out of Adderall and I have school and work tomorrow. Tips appreciated. And then the response is classic. I normally become suicidal / unable to leave the bed from fatigue when this happens. The Adderall culture is really crazy on campus. You got to understand, it's legal meth. And on campus, I probably shouldn't say this. Again, the University of Utah does not endorse any of this. I don't even know if they actually want me to use this studio for my own podcasting purposes. I'm still testing the waters. So you can sign up for this studio. Honestly, and it can be recurring, and it's very legit. It's pretty cool, actually. It's got the shotgun mic, official lighting. It's called the One Touch Studio, but it's supposed to be for presentation, so I sort of bullshitted and said I had a presentation. But it's cool because I can access this. This is the amazing, wonderful perks of being a college student, right? And paying the exorbitantly high tuition. Thank God for Pell Grants, it's unbelievable. But again, I do write for the newspaper here, and it's rewarding to see your stuff published. I always wanted to write articles, and honestly, I always say it was more about rather than the content of the articles being what I want to convince people. I'm not so much concerned with the content, but I'm more concerned with just convincing people, and getting them at least to think outside the box. But I'm never hell bent on an opinion piece. I really don't care that much. What I care about is the art of convincing people. I think that is a lost and subtle art. I can do that through the medium of writing. Again, that's UtahDailyChronicle.com, UtahDailyChronicle.com. My name is Nicholas Rush, and I am an opinion writer, and I am the assistant editor of the paper. The one thing about what I try never to do is write about Trump or about the border crisis because it's so saturated in the news media. Like my last article, for example, is journalism has a glaring lack of philosophical inquiry. So we could talk about that for a second. And it starts off, ever wondered why the corporate press is so apathetic in their not so hot pursuit for the truth? And then I break down the reasons why journalism is totally devoid of any philosophical inquiry, but not even philosophical argumentation. We're not asking for detailed, Spinoza-like arguments or even any philosophical arguments in general. But I think this is a great quote from Kenneth Goodman, which, let's see, he's the professor emeritus at, can't remember, a big school, at University of Arizona. He says, if philosophy is to be counted an important or even fundamental activity, it is a little mysterious why there is so little of a philosophical nature in a popular press that pays lip service, at least, to completeness in chronicling human affairs. I think that really codifies exactly what we're getting at, is that for the corporate press, who again, pays lip service to being the arbiters of truth and moral standing, they really lack a philosophical nature in terms of what they decide to cover. There needs to be a philosophical process to delineate what news stories are most important in terms of chronicling human affairs in a complete manner. And again, like I reference, think about it. 85,000 people starving in a famine in Yemen. And it says right here from the quote from the UN, 20 million people, or 70% of the population, are food insecure and one step away from a famine, according to the UN. But then there's 500 stories about Stormy Daniels. So you really can't believe the press at all anymore. Yeah, actually, let's see. MSNBC has done 455 stories on Stormy Daniels in the course of a year, while these global crises worldwide are getting little to no coverage. So, of course, nobody trusts the press anymore. Everybody can't stand the corporate press. That's why I want to give this a go, give it a shot, because I feel like, and I'm waiting, I'm going to get the super chat up. We're going to get that all going. Live streaming is going to be available to me within a few hours. I just put it all in motion last night. I think we're going to call it Thought Criminal with Nick Rush. I think that's a good name. I don't know if it's been used yet, but I kind of feel like I am a thought criminal. I get worried, if Mossad is listening, or the CIA. They might have this studio wired up. It is a publicly funded university. And I always thought I paid into this, my parents paid into this, and in-state tuition's not even that great of a deal. It's really a misnomer, the fact that you pay into the system to get in-state tuition and somehow you get a better deal. In fact, tuition was raised again at this university, and I don't want to hate on the University of Utah. It's a beautiful school. There's a lot of beauty on campus, a lot of aesthetic beauty you can see on the way to class. There's great promenades full of nice gardening, nice flower beds, and some yoga pants across campus. Can't complain about that. Get some falafel, down over by the Union. So it's all good. It's all good. I can't complain. living the university life. It's not bad. But that being said, the fact that tuition is raised almost biannually is really a terrible thing. I totally disagree with the process by which the university raises tuition. They do it without really any consent of the student or without consulting the students in any formal manner. In fact, I was writing an article called Truth in Tuition. So they had a quick seminar where they had a bunch of visual posters that talked about what's going to benefit the student by the raising of tuition once again. And it was saying stuff like they're going to have be more energy efficient. They're lending out more student loans. And you know, it's funny because of course that is a total fallacy that because there's more student loans, that's better for the student. If student loans are more accessible, then that's better for the student. That is not true. A Federal Reserve study that I cite in my article about the raising of, it's actually a different article about student debt in general and some of the skullduggery going on in regards to that. But of course, when the cap gets raised for student loans, for Stafford loans, Perkins loans, there's a direct correlation of tuition being raised by, I think, 15 cents. So anytime they raise the cap on student loans, of course, tuition inevitably goes up because the universities have price fixing. They don't have to worry about any competition. They're buttressed by almost infinite student loans being doled out to the students. So they really don't have to worry about keeping tuition low because the demand is high due to the fact that the government now themselves doles out student loans themselves. The Department of Education is the lender of most student loans on the market today. It has been nationalized. The student loan industry has been nationalized, I think, for the worse for the student. I think it only hurts the system because it raises tuition exorbitantly high because they have pricing power. You can't go into Burger King and Burger King raises the price of a burger to $10. No one's going to pay for it, obviously. Now, if they subsidized it and said, hey, don't worry, it's on Burger King today, but it's a loan, you know, then maybe people would buy it. But that's the thing is the universities have pricing power, and it's pretty corrupt when you think about it. But, you know, we persist. We want to be educated, an educated citizenry to contribute to this thriving democracy that we hear so much about, even though it's a republic, I thought. So anyways, more of a general idea of what I do. I'm trying to step into not the alt-right media by any stretch of the imagination, but I would like to compete with folks like Owen Benjamin and Nicholas Fuentes. You know, I wake up every day and I really think to myself, my day will be prosperous if I don't act psychotic like Owen Benjamin. You know, I watched him a little bit. He really is unhinged. He's totally off the rails. For being 40, he's really off his rocker. And watching him attack Fuentes so viciously is really comedic because Fuentes is this young, dynamic, really extemporaneously gifted podcaster or news host. And Owen Benjamin is just rife with jealousy of this young guy, and he sits in his little farm and he just goes off on Nick Fuentes like a lunatic. And I always think, you know, his wife must be a saint, Owen Benjamin's wife. My God. It's no wonder you see him streaming for hours a day and he's probably neglecting her, but that's a side issue. I just think if he can get 5K people watching a live stream, then so can I. I mean, other than his little 2-bit piano skills, he doesn't have much going. And I think Fuentes handled Benjamin. Benjamin is an absolute lunatic, and literally, I'm telling you, I measure my success and my success of normalcy, of being normal, by being the opposite of Owen Benjamin. So I just think, don't act like Owen Benjamin, and I'm gonna be fine. That's literally the rubric by which I judge my normalcy. So, some of the stuff that I'm interested in, of course, is this political landscape, PC culture. Of course, that's been delved into deeply, but I don't think there's been enough nuance on a lot of stuff. Like, for example, Iran, what's going on with Iran. I can't believe the blinders that people have on. And it really is the boomers that tune into CNN and see a photo of a tanker with a hole in the side, and then and then are supposed to believe that's veritable proof that Iran attacked this oil tanker. I think boomers are the ones that believe in those CNN chyrons and headlines, and because it's on the television, broadcasted from CNN and the stewards of news and truth of Turner Networks, I think the boomers are the ones who believe in that. The Zoomers and Generation Y, they really don't believe that. Just because we see that on television, we don't necessarily believe that that's true. We like to have a more nuanced take on things, and we know the government has lied to us. The youth is really waking up to CIA coup culture, whether it was Mossadegh in Iran, whether it was Allende in Chile, Lumumbo. So I just think people have caught on to the skullduggery of coup d'etats and the real nature of our government. Boomers have a real benevolent view of government, like coming home from World War II and kissing some random girl at a huge parade in New York City and leaning her back, and there's confetti and everything's good and grand and life is great on the Western Front. All is quiet on the Western Front. And we fought, stormed Normandy, Utah Beach to win against the Nazis and the Atlantic Wall, and the Atlantic Wall failed because it didn't have a roof, and we flew our planes over, and that war, of course, we won't get into World War. Maybe we'll get into World War II and some of the discrepancies sometime in the near future. That'd be interesting. But I just think that people don't buy into that idealistic sort of perfect world that the United States wanted to tell its citizens existed. Zoomers are much more inclined to look at things in a cynical way. I notice boomers are absolutely not cynical. They are the opposite of cynical. I think being cynical is a good thing. Being cynical means you always look at people's motives. And, if you're practicing law, of course, like criminal, motive is huge, obviously, as to figuring out the reasonings behind the crime and who would be responsible based off the most plausible motive. Who's got the most plausible motive to do? So when an oil tanker gets hit in the Straits of Hormuz in Iran, who's got the most plausible motive to start something in Iran? I wouldn't say it's Iran. And with John Bolton as National Security Advisor running shit, it's no surprise that the youth in this country, and worldwide for that matter, does not trust the blanket statement that Iran's Revolutionary Guard was responsible for these acts in the Straits of Hormuz. And I think that's emblematic of the cynicism that we're talking about in the younger culture. And I do think it's because of the inundation of conspiratorial notions. The youth in this country, and when I say that, I guess I mean like 26 and under. I remember watching Loose Change, which is the 9/11 documentary on Netflix, which, by the way, I couldn't believe it was on Netflix, which made me, again, cynical about that itself. Why was it on Netflix? Was this a limited hangout in terms of dropping? And that, if you know what a limited hangout is, it's an intelligence term for dropping a little bit of truth to pacify the public, and then seeing how they react to those little nuggets of truth. It's like strategic leaking by an intelligence agency. Anyways, I was curious as to why Loose Change, if you've ever seen it, it's a 9/11 documentary. It's conspiratorial on Netflix. And I saw that when I was young, probably like 16, 17 years old, and I was blown away. It totally changed my worldview. And that's the great thing about the internet, is that wasn't a documentary like Loose Change was not accessible in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. The corporate press, and you know the word media, it's about, the etymology is the medium. They are the medium by which we consume news, and then by virtue of its logical conclusion, it's the medium by which we consume truth. So our truth is adjudicated objectively, because where else would we have gotten it other than textbooks and stuff like that? That's a little different, history books. But they're actually the medium of truth, and the media is the medium, the corporate media. That's where the word media comes from. So they were our medium to any sort of semblance of truth. And of course the news. And when these documentaries were able to be posted online in the early 2000s, it totally destroyed their paradigm, the mainstream corporate press. It totally ruined their paradigm. The internet was the great equalizer, because no longer was the corporate press the medium for truth, and they couldn't lay or claim the mantle of objective truth anymore, because there was things such as Wikipedia, which again has its flaws, and documentaries that came out and independently exposed some truth that, of course, the corporate press wanted to keep under wraps. As you know, Dick Cheney had a huge stake in Halliburton. Its stock went up 500% during the peak of the Iraq War. And this was all exposed. I don't think when 9/11 happened, the corporate press thought that the internet, they couldn't quite see the trajectory of the internet and how big it was going to be in terms of being able to access infinite amount of information, and you could access the truth and find out for yourself. And I think that's what separates the boomers from the zoomers. The boomers still turn on the fucking TV and believe every word they hear. My dad watches CNN, but he watches it like music, like elevator music, like background noise. It's like fucking cafe music to him. He sits around and watches CNN and fucking Don Lemon and Anderson Pooper and Chris Homo. And, you know, again, he's just sort of texting while watching it. It's just sort of it's funny for boomers. That shit is background music to boomers, CNN. But they still kind of watch and believe. They still believe it. They still believe Gloria Vanderbilt's son, CIA intern Anderson Cooper. They still want to believe that Anderson Cooper is the arbiter of truth coming from, and Wolf Blitzer, former Mossad guy. See, and I feel, that's the thing is, Mossad is kind of a euphemism for something else, but I'll leave it at that. But Mossad, the Israeli intelligence service, the awareness of Mossad has never been more topical in culture. And that's a new thing. And the CIA as well, like Operation Mockingbird, Timber Sycamore, it's all been exposed. And people are very cynical about Mossad and the CIA, and they've sort of been exposed. People know the honeypot operations, what's going on with Ghislaine Maxwell and Epstein. I think Ghislaine Maxwell was Epstein's conduit to Mossad. I mean, that's been said before. That seems the most plausible thing about Epstein in terms of him having being an intelligence asset. Which, what's funny? Alex Acosta, the now the ex-Secretary of Labor for Trump, he admitted that while talking to the Trump transition team when he was about to be confirmed for this position, he admitted that Epstein was an intelligence asset, and that's what he was told. That Epstein was above his pay grade. So, okay, so if you're the district attorney, or I don't know if he was the DA of Miami-Dade County, something like that. Either way, had a high position, and you're told in the most powerful country in the world that this Jewish financier, Jeffrey Epstein, is above your pay grade. In one of the biggest counties in the country, in the most powerful country in the world, you're told someone's above your... Now that's... So who told him that, though? That's what I want to know. Was it Dershowitz? Who told Alex Acosta that Epstein was above Acosta's pay grade, and he shouldn't go after him, and that he was an intelligence asset? Now, Acosta is testifying, I believe. Let's see when he's testifying. So he's going to testify before the House Ways and Means Committee. Okay, I can't find when exactly. That's going to be really something to watch, I'll tell you what. Acosta needs to go under oath. I mean, this is the fact that Epstein was caught in 2008 and got this sweetheart. Is that funny? I think and again, here's where the media is so fucked up. They call it a sweetheart deal. Think about that. Think about the innocuous phrasing and terminology in calling Epstein's deal a sweetheart deal. It almost sounds good. It almost sounds positive in a way. Epstein got a sweetheart deal. Good for him. Good for him trafficking girls in New York, Good for him. And I just think it's funny that people on the left don't viciously call out Epstein for being this total abuser of women. Maybe because he's tied to people to the left. But I think it's funny because Epstein, he's an interesting character. Again, no one knows where he got the money, his wealth. No one knows how he got the job teaching at Dalton School, which is a big private school in New York. As a math teacher, he had no degree. It is the most mysterious story. This Epstein thing is crazy. I wonder how much of it's going to get exposed. And here's what I see. So the Southern District of New York is the one who's prosecuting Epstein. Is it a political ploy to come after Trump? Because we all know the Southern District of New York is vehemently against Donald Trump. So is it a ploy to come after, is it political why they're going after Epstein? Because they want to go after Trump? Many are saying that. I could see that being the case. The Southern District of New York obviously has been fighting against Trump viciously, suing him any chance that they get. And I could see them coming after Epstein in order to get to Trump somehow, which is interesting. And again, what else I can't quite wrap my head around is the role that James Comey's daughter has in this. She's the prosecutor, going to be one of the main prosecutors against Epstein in this case. And we all know Comey is, bought and paid for. Comey is part of the deep state. He's part of, and see, the deep state, the terminology of the deep state is now negative and conspiratorial and has negative connotations, but it's real. And what I always tell people is, you don't elect the FBI, do you? Now, bear in mind, Trump can fire the heads of the FBI. He can fire the head of the CIA and replace them. But that being said, the entrenched bureaucracy, and this is where you have to know about political bureaucracies and the navigation thereof. Trump, the inner workings, sure, Trump can pick the top guy and move pieces around at the top, but that doesn't do much. The entrenched policies of the CIA, the DIA, the NSA, the FBI, those are, and of course the thousands of employees and the covert operations that they're engaged in, these are perennial and everlasting organizations. We don't vote them in and out. They're, again, like the Federal Reserve has no oversight. You can pull up the clip of Alan Greenspan saying that they have no oversight. I don't think the CIA has oversight, even though Congress should do, and that's the thing. Congress's derelict of duty, abdicating, asleep at the wheel, oversight is critical to the function of this government, and our Congress is totally inept and incompetent at doing so. So, again, to say the deep state's got negative conspiratorial connotations, but it's all real. It's all legit. Again, because you don't vote them in and out. As the two-party facade runs its course, as we always see, these entrenched bureaucracies stay. They stay in place, and they continue operations. And that's an issue. And the way to fix this country is to hold these intelligence agencies accountable, all 17 of them, or however the fuck many there are. We need to get rid of these intelligence agencies in terms of how bloated and bureaucratic they've become, how entrenched they've become, and how little the American people know about the and that's what I'm saying. When the empire, like the famous We're History's Actors, which is in 2002 what one of the White House aides told a journalist about being, he says, I'm just paraphrasing, we're an empire now, that means we create reality. And when you're busy focusing on studying judiciously that reality we've created, we'll create another reality. And then you'll study that one. So we're history's actors, is what the guy told the journalist. And that's what happens. At this point in time, in chronological time, in terms of human development, the government is so giant at this point in America that it's impossible really to hold it accountable in any way, shape, or form as a citizen. When you live in it, and that's why I like the idea of the confederacies, loosely affiliated statehood trumping national identity, only because in European countries, they can go, like in Armenia, for example, they'll go and storm the palace of the president and just throw his ass on the fucking street. And I'm saying that's because, first of all, it's territorial limits. The territorial constraints of Armenia, because it's a small country, allows the citizens to actually go and have a physical uprising, not violent in terms of that, but how small they are actually helps them hold their leaders accountable. They're able to go just storm the public buildings, storm City Hall, storm the presidential palace, or what have you. Like, let me look up this story. Armenia throws out president. I think they literally just stormed in and threw his fucking ass out on the street. Yeah, a bloodless uprising in Armenia just forced the leader to resign while peaceful revolutions follow. And this is what I'm getting at. I'll make it clear in a point. Or I'll make the point clear in 1 second. Let me read to you guys exactly what happened. If I could get this to load. Of course, it's being slow. Let's see. Yeah, I'm trying to find. Yeah, I'm trying to find where the story of. I'm pretty sure they just held a massive protest because it's like the city center is probably quite small, so they can just quickly make their voices heard because of the territorial constraints of Armenia. Anyways, yeah, it's... So apparently, yeah, a bloodless uprising in Armenia just forced the leader to resign. Anyways, apparently they flooded the streets. Yeah, let's see. Thousands of students, pensioners, priests, and finally soldiers chanted for 11 days nonstop, "Reject Sirs," the slogan originally invented by a charismatic opposition leader and member of parliament, Nikol Pashinyan. On Monday, Sargsyan resigned from his post to overwhelming joy of Armenians around the world. Again, I think that's what's great about Europe and the territorial constraints of the countries and the individual sovereignty between all the European countries. Now, you do have the overwhelming umbrella of the EU, and that reminds me of the United States. And of course, then they're just making decisions from Brussels. So when you're in Croatia and they hold the EU council meetings and all that shit in Brussels, your sovereignty is very limited. And in America, it's the same. Revolution is hindered by the enormity of the country itself and the ever-dissolving sovereignty of states in favor of... Now, I know our Constitution grants states rights and then yields at times to the government, of course, in certain situations. But I think, again, territorial constraint is a big factor in terms of whether or not you can pull off a revolution or not. In European countries, again, because they're so tiny, people can go storm the city hall. You know, there's only 1 million people in the country, and political change can be affected very quickly. Now, that could lead to volatility, which could make that happen over and over again. And then there's revolutions here and is like the French revolutions before Napoleon. They couldn't figure out which way they wanted. There was no, because it was such a revolutionary culture, they couldn't keep a government in power at all. So that's an issue in itself too, but I just don't see, because of the deep state, because of the giant bureaucratic, bloated, absolutely disgusting creature that has become the federal government, that's just sucking the blood of hundreds of millions of Americans. I just see that as hindering our ability to have a revolution because of the bureaucratic bloat that we have in this country. That's in part due to the territorial vastness of America. Again, it reminds me of the EU. Things are done in Brussels, things are done in DC. We always talk, me and my friends talk about, I almost feel it'd be better if each state was like a country and the United States was more like Europe. Now I know people would say that would leave us open to attacks and invasion. We wouldn't be united. We'd be states, but not united. But I think then in each individual state, each citizen would have more control over their daily life. The federal government is so, see again, then if Utah, for example, my home state, was a sovereign state, like a country, like Armenia, we'd be able to enact more political change. We wouldn't have to worry about the huge big brother umbrella federal government with all its corrupt bureaucratic entities and intelligence agencies and like the CIA. All Americans have to deal with the CIA, the DIA, the NSA. If we were our own sovereign states in terms of like being a small nation, the nation of Utah, if you will, well, then we wouldn't have to deal with the CIA if we didn't want to. So it's tough because you want to keep the unity of the country. It allows us to be a superpower, an economic powerhouse, but you do lose sovereignty when you live in such a vast empire. As you can see in Russia, China, any large territorial mass, it's harder to affect revolutionary change. The countries are more under an iron grip when there's more territorial vastness. One thing I found that I find funny that's just totally emblematic of this shit is Operation Timber Sycamore. It doesn't really, and again, thank God for the internet or else you would never fucking hear about this. That is a fact. So Timber Sycamore, now I'm getting this off Wikipedia, so again, who knows? Who knows what's true? That's what's fucked. But like on the spectrum of truth of being exposed, Wikipedia is like better. It's better than the I don't know whether or not it's all true. Of course, you can't believe everything on the internet, but the internet does expose more of the truth, of course, on the spectrum of truth. Might not be full, unadulterated, pure, blissful truth, but it's right up there. Timber Sycamore is a classified weapons supply and training program run by the United States Central Intelligence Agency and supported by some Arab intelligence services, such as the Security Service in Saudi Arabia. Launched in 2012 or 13, it supplied money, weaponry, and training to rebel forces fighting Syrian President Bashar al-Assad in the Syrian civil war. According to U.S. officials, the program has trained thousands of rebels. President Barack Obama secretly authorized the CIA to begin arming Syria's embattled rebels in 2013. Isn't that funny? Supplied money, weaponry, and training to rebel forces fighting Assad. So that's what I always say. Okay, so we were in Syria. Russia was in Syria. ISIS was in Syria, and Assad's government was running Syria. So how were we fighting ISIS and Assad? Could never quite wrap my mind around that. Well, now you know. It's because we were funding rebels that were fighting Assad. Who else? So who? Let's just think of the parties who were fighting Assad. The United States, ISIS, al-Nusra, and maybe the YPG, right? The Kurdish factions were also fighting against Assad. They have autonomous statehood, but they were also fighting against ISIS. You see. So it's like the enemy of my enemy, you know? How were we fighting ISIS and also Assad when ISIS was fighting Assad and Assad was fighting ISIS? So we were trying to get rid of the people who were trying to get rid of Assad while we were also trying to get rid of Assad. It doesn't make any fucking sense. So the logical conclusion is we were fucking funding ISIS through this timber sycamore. And they were the rebels. The rebels. Come on, guys. This is crazy. But again, you tell a boomer that, and they literally can't fucking comprehend it. Even an intelligent boomer. They just can't come to grips with it. They have the halconic, idealistic, 1950s style vision of this wonderful, harmless, democratic, loving America. They just don't, like, you could be like, look, here's the documents, and I think they just gave up. The boomers fucking gave up. They were so fucked by everything that happened. But the millennials, even the millennials they're fucked, and I guess I'm in the millennial, I'm 24. I guess I'm in the millennial group, but even so, we see this and we're like, that's fucked up. Holy shit. Like, they might have been our government might have been funding ISIS, Operation Timber Sycamore. Fucking declassified. Well, it was classified. But see, the Americans never get to decide. Because guess what? Obama secretly authorized the CIA. This is the bloating of the intelligence. This is this is the deep state. Secrecy. Deep state. Deep means secret. So that's all it is. It's the secret shit that goes on, and this is part of it. Authorized the CIA to begin arming Syrian rebels. 2013. It's just a fact. But boomers fucking won't get it. I hope the Zoomers wake up to all this shit, and I know they do. I know they will, because that's the nature of the internet. It's hard to not be woke with the internet. If you aren't woke with the internet, you're a fucking idiot. I'm sorry. And yeah, I wonder how this leaked, because, okay, yeah, and listen, it was phased out. So in July 2017, anonymous officials stated that Trump, in consultation with National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster and Mike Pompeo, decided to phase out support for anti-Assad Syrian rebel forces, possibly redirecting resources to fighting ISIL, to offering rebel forces defensive capabilities, or to other operations in the region. So Trump pulled out of it because, a lot of people think Trump's woke to all this stuff and the deep state. And I always said this is an interesting point that I always thought about Trump. And this was the hope for Trump for me, because I'm so cynical to politicians in the left-right paradigm that I don't believe fucking anything. And that's where you get the nihilistic views of the Zoomers, who a lot of people think they're nihilistic. I don't think that. I see someone like Nicholas Fuentes, and I think Fuentes is a great medium, Fuentes, I have a lot of respect for Nick Fuentes, and I know I might get heat for saying that, but I think he's rational. He's rational in his extremism. There's something to be said about that. Many groups are extreme. To be rational in your extremism is sort of the ideal, because if you're not extreme, that means you're a centrist or whatever, and you're stagnant. You're for the status quo. That's what the fucking boomers are good at. But the thing, back to what I was saying, the silver lining about Trump is that Trump, I always thought his ego might be so fucking big, that even the deep state would bug the shit out of him that they were doing stuff behind his back. Because someone with an ego as massive as Trump, that's a slight to him that you're doing stuff behind his back. He sees that from a very visceral, primal level. Others might understand what's going on and understand the Machiavellian. Trump's not really Machiavellian. He is, but he's also very simplistic. So the silver lining is that you would hope Trump his ego is so fragile that he sees what's going on, and it's not that he disagrees with the principles and the morality of it, but simply by very virtue of the fact that he doesn't want anyone to control him because of his ego. And you've seen a lot of people get fired in the Trump administration or whatever once they get a lot of media attention, because Trump never wants to be one-upped. So I always thought Trump might be the one who's not controlled by Zionists or whatever the neocons or whatever cough you want to give. You know, big ups to Trump. I thought his ego might be too big that he would ever be controlled. He could inoculate himself by virtue of how big his ego is, because he would see that as a slight. And that's why he always said, I'm not funded by big corporate donors, even though big donors did donate to him, Sheldon Adelson being one, the Mercer family being another. So Trump's lied a little bit about being totally self-funded, but I think that was the concept of hoping for Trump, is that he had such a big ego that he would be so livid if anyone had any semblance of control over him that he wouldn't let that happen. And then therefore he would operate as a real president, passing meaningful legislation that sort of gets rid of some of these deep state entities. And we've seen a lot of stuff exposed. That's a fact. And what's funny is how the Timber Sycamore program stopped right when Trump took office. So that goes to show Trump a lot of people say presidents are puppets. Now, whether or not that's true, it's complicated, but Trump showed that he will, in fact, change things. Like, I always say, when was the last time you saw an ISIS terrorist attack? When was the last time? It's funny how it peaked in 2014. Did they just stop hating America? Did they just, no, I don't think so. I mean, John Bolton's a fucking national security advisor. You don't think the Islamist extremists still hate us? Deservedly so. But I'm saying, again, that's the whole point, is that maybe those ISIS attacks were not as lone wolf as they seem, or just spontaneous, or haphazardly done. No. I think, again, Trump might have put the kibosh on all the deep state activities, or at least one would hope. But that would make sense. When was the last time there was an ISIS attack? It's been a long time. And they stopped right around the time Trump took over. So that says a lot, because, again, why would they stop? They were going on all the time. If you remember 2013, 14, 15, 16, it was all about ISIS all over the news. But listen to this clip. I hope you'll be able to hear it through the shotgun mic of Obama admitting to arming ISIS. Or training ISIS. Let's listen to this. It's pretty funny.
Said before, this aspect of our strategy was moving too slowly, but the fall of Ramadi has galvanized the Iraqi government. So with the additional steps I ordered last month, we're speeding up training of ISIL forces, including volunteers from Sunni tribes in Anbar province.
Training ISIL forces. Was it a slip of the tongue? Again, leave it to only RT Ruptly to post this. Leave it to RT. They're the only ones who would ever post this. And that's what I had a globalization class in world politics, and obviously I'm an anti-globalist. So I let my opinion be known in class many times. And we were talking about, the foreign media has had such an impact because, again, now the mainstream corporate press does not have a stranglehold on the market anymore, does not have a stranglehold on the news. Now you could watch RT. You could see what they say. They'll tell you it's government Russian propaganda, but I'll tell you what, they tell the truth, and I wonder why. And watch. I bet you RT gets banned off YouTube at some point in the near future. I could see that happening. But only RT would post it and says, did Obama just admit to training ISIS? And the answer is yeah. Yeah, he did. It's called a Freudian slip. He might have, you know what I'm saying? So this is all the great thing about this generation. People want to be negative and despair salesmen, despair merchants. But the internet, you could watch, normally you wouldn't be able to see this clip. You just have to watch Tom Brokaw and then the TV turns off. And you just have to wait till the next day, or you have to rely on the fucking history books in the library. You don't know if those are true. There's an agenda to all of that. And now you could watch RT, you could watch Press TV, you could watch Iranian television, Turkish television. They can't stop it. They can't stop the truth. It's all coming out. Thank God for the internet. It's the great equalizer. And that's why we need to keep sovereignty of the internet, or else we're fucked for sure. But the fact that you could access the truth 24 hours a day, and you don't have to get it from the medium of the corporate press, is very, very, very inspiring, and it, brings a lot of hope to a hopeless situation that some young people feel. We got a long way to go, but we need independent voices to rise up, and that way we can become the majority. And no one's gonna watch CNN because think about it. You think when Don Lemon comes on TV, who's writing that? Who's writing the teleprompter? It's not him. Who is the producer? It's the chain of command, the hierarchy, and it gets up to the dictum and the dictates of the corporate press that distribute the talking points based off what their corporate donors, Viacom, or their corporate owners, Viacom and Disney, or whoever it might be, Time Warner, want them to say. Any truth is filtered through Time Warner and Viacom, and they have to rubber stamp what gets put out. So the truth will be suppressed. It's only a reflection of what they want to come out. So whatever Time Warner doesn't want to come out and be exposed, well, whatever you see on TV is just a reflection of their interest, obviously. So that's why I'm here behind this little nice green screen here and in this cute little studio trying to make a name for myself and, get you guys to get on board with the squad, because there's a lot of independent news media out there, but a lot of them are fucking shit. And people like Owen Benjamin, fucking psycho that gives you almost zero substance, talks about logos and then goes out and disparages everyone. Talks about respect and family and values and morality, and then goes on a 2-hour rant about a 20-year-old Nick Fuentes and brings up his underage sister and disparages her. And these are the people that we want to listen to? Big Bear! Big Bear! Come on, guys. Come on. It's a fucking joke, bro. And that's why, I would like to do an interview with Fuentes. Because, again, I like how he's rational in his extremism. And I think there's something to be said about that. So, I'm going to wrap this one up. It's been 62 minutes. That's crazy how quick the time flew right there. I guess I'm having fun, as they say. I'll be doing this maybe twice a week. I'm going to get the super chat up, going to get the live stream up, and that way we'll be able to collaborate together with viewers. This is something I've been wanting to do for a while. It'll be social commentary covering the corruption. We'll just be looking for the truth, whether or not it's told on the left, right, center, whether or not it's coming from Ron Paul or fucking, Nick Fuentes, whatever. We're gonna just say how it is, and it's gonna be fun. We're gonna grow this channel, and we're gonna do it. So, big ups to everyone who helped me get this started, including the University of Utah. Again, they don't endorse any of this content, so just remember that. Peace out, guys.